What is going on, guys? It's your boy SF Bay Area Sports Talk, and here we are to talk about one of the dominoes to have fallen before this July 31st trade deadline, as the Toronto Blue Jays have traded Marcus Stroman to the New York Mets in exchange for two pitching prospects by the name of Anthony Kay, a left-hander, and he was a first-round draft pick with the Mets in 2016. And of course, he was one of their top pitching prospects. And then also you have Simeon Woods Richardson, an 18-year-old, very young here. He was a second-round pick of the New York Mets in 2018. And so when we look at this trade and we look at the Blue Jays and we look at where they are in the standings at this point, having a very difficult season at 40-67 now. And so it appears that, this trade was a sell now to improve and get better into the future. And Marcus Stroman, he was having a phenomenal year. He had been pitching very well over his last 7 starts. And so, his value was definitely up there in terms of, out there on the trade market. And we look at the season he was having. He had pitched 124 innings. And in those 124 innings, he got 99 strikeouts, had a 1.23 whip, gave up 118 hits, which is not bad, less than a hit an inning. Did walk 35 batters. And so, the walk total could be a little bit more down, but not too bad. What's even more impressive is that he had an opponent's batting average of 248. And so we will get into the two pitching prospects that the Blue Jays have acquired. We'll talk about their stats in a little bit. But to move from the Blue Jays side of things to the New York Mets perspective and acquiring Marcus Stroman, the Mets at 50-55, they have been playing very good baseball of late, having won 4 straight games. And of course, since the All-Star break, the Mets have won 10 out of 15. What's even fascinating about that is that 3 of those losses actually came from my Giants, who have been one of the best teams, the best team in baseball. In their last 24 games, we're 19-5. And when you look at our situation, Madison Bumgarner, it's a similar situation with what the Blue Jays had in Marcus Stroman. And of course, they pulled the plug in trading, their fan favorite, a guy that loves the city of Toronto. And so, from my perspective and side of things, I'm hoping that Madison Bumgarner is not moved prior to this deadline. But honestly, anything can happen at this point. And so we just have to wait and see what's going to happen over these next 2 days. So if you're the New York Mets and you just made this deal, there's 2 things to look at it. One is that this team could still very well vie for a playoff spot in the wild card, and acquiring Stroman is definitely going to help their services. Now, the New York Mets also, are of the mindset of building into the future, and so Noah Syndergaard has been a name that has been brought up a lot in trade talks. And so with Marcus Stroman now being off the board, and the Yankees, the Yankees need starting pitching very bad. They've talked to the Giants about Madison Bumgarner, and, they did have their sights set on Marcus Stroman. Of course, now that he's off the board, the value of Noah Syndergaard now definitely has gone up. And so if you're the New York Mets and someone's trying to acquire Noah Syndergaard, now you can raise maybe your asking price on what you're going to receive in return. Now, of course, if they do not get the value that they think that they deserve in return, they definitely probably will not pull the plug on trading a Noah Syndergaard. But also, they have been trying to move a Zach Wheeler, as Zach Wheeler is going to be a free agent at the end of the year. But of course, that remains to be seen whether or not, they'll receive that package. But definitely, if you look at the Mets, they have some top starting pitching. So whether they trade these guys in the next couple days now, you look at where they could be in the offseason at the winter meetings. They could have a lot of teams knocking on their door, calling their phone line, saying to the Mets GM, saying, hey, we want these guys, and what do you think about these players, and try to get that dialogue moving and flowing. So, guys, also wanted to mention about Marcus Stroman is that with his 2.96 ERA on the year, that was the 5th best ERA in the American League. And what's even more impressive about that is that Marcus Stroman is pitching in a very tough division in the American League East. And also Stroman was only giving up less than a home run per 9 innings, averaging 0.7 home runs allowed. So, just very impressive. And if you're a Mets fan, you're feeling excited at this point because the starting pitching that you have now and the way that you've been playing lately, just like how my Giants have been playing lately, it's got us feeling some excitement and just, you can't wait to watch the game and the next series and, go day by day. So very exciting. And so now we are going to get into the pitching side of things of the 2 pitching prospects coming over to the Blue Jays. And the Blue Jays, they're looking to build into the future. And when you make a deal like this, this in a study conducted by Baseball America, what they found is that since 2003, top prospects that have been traded at the July 31st trade deadline, of those prospects, only 20% of them, meaning 1 out of every 5 players, has actually gone on to play up to 2 years or more of Major League service. And not only that, but have a positive wins above replacement, meaning, that they were able to provide some big time contribution to the winning side of things with the organization. And so that's not a very high probability rate. And that's, of course, the risk that you take if you're the Blue Jays general manager here, is that you're taking a risk because these 2 pitching prospects, in Anthony Kay and Simeon Woods Richardson, you do not know how things are going to pan out. And that, of course, is going to take some time to see the development of these players. And, you don't know if they're going to turn out to be like the value of a Marcus Stroman. But when, you're in sell mode and you're trying to build into the future, you're always trying to acquire as many pitching prospects or prospects in general, that you give yourself a nice opportunity down the road, to develop some really great players. And so now let's get into those stats, guys. For Anthony Kay, who is I believe 24 years old, so still pretty young. He's actually my age, which is pretty impressive. And across 2 minor league levels, he had an 8-6 record with a 3.13 ERA, and that was in 19 games started. So he had 97 2/3 innings pitched. He gave up 78 hits, 31 walks, and had only an opponent's batting average of 221. So when you look at that, the batting average against, very impressive. Now, the one cause for concern is probably the high walk total with 31 walks. That's definitely something that Anthony Kay can definitely work on. And being that he's in the minor leagues, you hope that by the time he reaches the major league level, that his command of his pitches will be a lot better. And that walk total is definitely going to dwindle. And now let's look at Simeon Woods Richardson, a very young prospect here. Only 18 years old, and in single A, he had a 3-8 record with a 4.25 ERA. And in 20 games started, he pitched a total of 78 1/3 innings pitched, giving up 78 hits and 17 walks. So 17 walks is not that bad, but again, kind of a bit high total. But of course, with these young pitchers, you're going to see that a lot. You're going to see high walk totals because, they're still learning how to command their pitches. They're still learning to build that confidence and being able to throw any pitch in any count. I mean, that's the highest level of confidence that anyone can have. And as a pitcher, you never know what kind of stuff is going to transition from the bullpen into the game. And so when you have that confidence and, you have more than, say, a couple pitches, like Tim Lincecum, we all remember him, right? When he first came up, I think he was only a fastball, curveball, or fastball slider guy. So he only had 2 pitches. Once he developed that changeup and he started to develop a more repertoire of pitches, you saw a complete transformation as a pitcher. So, when we look at these 2 prospects, I think there is definitely some excitement if you're a Blue Jays fan that these guys can blossom into phenomenal players. And of course, from the Mets side of things, you're in a really good place right now because you're in an opportunity where, essentially you are buying at the deadline and you could very well vie for a playoff spot here in that National League wildcard race, which is very tight. It is a big dogfight. That is definitely going to be the biggest cause for concern for the Mets, is trying to leapfrog as many teams that are ahead of them in the standings. One final note that I wanted to mention, guys, is that a lot of baseball GMs have been in difficult situations in the past and have had to make some very tough decisions. One of those being back in 2016 when Theo Epstein, who was running the Chicago Cubs, he made the deal to trade Gleyber Torres, who wound up being a future premium all-star. He traded him to the Yankees in exchange for Aroldis Chapman, who wound up only being like a 2-month rental. But what you saw is that led to the Cubs winning a World Series and breaking that 100-plus year curse. They call it the curse of the Billy Goat. For the longest time, that was all we heard. But the Cubs wound up winning a World Series. And although Chapman, of course, the Cubs, I'm sure, had hopes of being able to re-sign him, Chapman wound up going back to the Yankees. But when you get a World Series out of that, I think that's a win situation, because not many teams can say that they've won a World Series in the last decade or last 20 years or so, let alone the Giants. 3 championships in a span of 5 years. That was just a phenomenal run, a phenomenal ride that we were on. And of course, now in Bochy's last year, we have an opportunity to win another one and send him off into retirement. So that is something that I cannot be more ecstatic and excited to see how this playoff race is going to play out. And so, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, be sure to smash that like button if you made it all the way through to the end of the video. And comment down below, Toronto Blue Jay fans out there and New York Mets fans. I'd love to hear your opinion and your perspective regarding the trade. What are your guys' thoughts? And, whether your team should be buyers or sellers. Obviously, the Blue Jays, they're in sell mode, but if you're the Mets, you're definitely in a scenario that you could be buying and selling. And will Noah Syndergaard get moved? And also, will Zach Wheeler get traded? So all of that is very interesting. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts. And so until next time, I will see you again. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.